Good evening. I've entitled my talk Trying to be Useful. Those are values that... does this, Praveen, did you get?
You had to press
the green one?
That's one, yeah.
Oh, there we go. That came from my family, from my parents. This is on their wedding day in 1951. My dad had recently been demobbed. He came from a family of colonials who were, by definition, pretty useless when we didn't have an empire anymore. And my mum was a fantastic cook who drew her inspiration from what grew on the farm. And I think the fusion of those things, an innovative farmer and an inspired cook, and that sort of idea that you should try and do something useful with your life was the foundation for my business. Is there a knack to this, Praveen? Oh, there we go. And so, I grew up on the farm. I went away and studied agriculture at Oxford. I came home and I milked cows. I didn't like it very much. I argued with my family. I got myself a snappy suit and went up to London and got a job as a management consultant. And I went to New York and I carried on being a management consultant, decided it was all morally bankrupt. And I went off and sailed boats around for a while. And then I came back to the farm, and there we go. And I started growing vegetables. That's 1987, 32 years ago. I'm not quite that lean anymore, sadly. And I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I learned a bit from my mum, helping her in the garden, and the Royal Horticultural Society's gardening book was my Bible, and I just, a bit like Praveen, really, I didn't really have a clue what I was doing, but, you know, somehow hard work made up for the mistakes, and I'm sorry, yeah, there we go. And I delivered the boxes out of my 2CV around local shops, took the seat out, threw it away, and that was back in, again, like Praveen, in the 80s. It weren't, I mean, there was the start of a kind of, in our area in South Devon, quite alternative. There was some interest in organic vegetables, but mostly they were sold to the conventional trade. So we grow lots of vegetables. That's snob's kale, cavolo nero, and I also have a bit of a passion for growing artichokes. I've been away for a fortnight. I'm going back tomorrow, and the first thing I'll do is go and pick my artichokes. But mostly we grow potatoes and carrots and all the... And after, so we did start selling to the local shops, then wholesalers in London. And at that road, there were no farmers' markets, there were no box schemes. As you grew, all roads led to the supermarket, and indeed we did end up selling to Waitrose and Sainsbury's. Oh, it's got a mind of its own now. And it was a hideous experience, and I'm very glad that we don't sell them anymore. So we started selling the vegetable boxes. We were the third one in the country. It wasn't my idea. I copied it off someone who farmed in Devon. Anyway, and I think I sold £6,000 worth of vegetables in my first year. We sold 70-something thousand pounds this year, 70-something million pounds. Sorry, I got missed out a few noughts there. In fact, we pack a vegetable box every 3 seconds and deliver them throughout the UK. And the business became employee-owned last year. The staff now own 74% of the business, and that's my dad in the front, who taught me to try to be useful. He sadly died this year, and that's my sister Rachel, who's our managing director. It does still have a marketing director. It does still have quite a kind of family feel to it, I think. Yeah, we don't keep sheep. The idea of the slide was to... my father told me that they're always looking for a new way to die, so I did try it briefly as a teenager, and he proved to be right. But the idea of the slide is that I didn't get from being that lad with the wheelbarrow to a £70 million business by being a sheep. You know, I think we've always sort of done things somewhat differently. I don't know what... this is the latest thing. We've just finished picking wild garlic. This is ransoms, as we call it in Devon. And I think I am as far as I know, the only person to be selling this in a really sort of commercial way, to the extent we sold about £50,000 worth of wild garlic in the last 2 months, and I have started seeding it into the woods, and this is an experimental plot, and you can see the second generation stuff seeding itself in the front. We planted 60 acres of woodland I'll come back to this. This is about trying to grow vegetables in a way which is less environmentally invasive. So not being a sheep, not doing it like everybody else, we have extraordinary relationships with the growers that supply us. Now, I've founded a cooperative. This is Anthony Coker, who I went to school with, along with 2 of the other co-op members. And quite unlike anyone else in the vegetable trade, you know, I've been trading with Anthony for, I don't know, 25 years or something, with most of our growers for 10 to 20 years. We believe in long-term trading relationships, in trying to find something which is mutually beneficial, which I'm guessing is quite different to most supermarket relationships. Maybe they're reforming themselves, but it was one of the reasons why I'm very glad to be out of it. And Pepe in Spain, who grows spinach for us in the winter and asparagus in the spring, and the pineapple growers in Togo that we get the pineapples directly from. I mean, they are really quite extraordinary relationships. So that's with the growers. With our customers, you know, we really do invest hugely in trying to get to know our customers and getting close to them and trying to teach them how to cook vegetables, because most of them, a lot of them, actually, a lot of the younger ones in particular, the main problem facing the business is that the youth just don't know how to cook on the whole. In particular, they don't know how to cook vegetables. In particular, they don't know how to cook vegetables that grow in this country. So they might know how to cook a pepper, but they haven't got a clue what to do with a Savoy cabbage on the whole. So maybe they'll become fashionable like cauliflowers have before long. Anyway, sorry, we built this yurt to go around and cook in fields around the country and get close to our customers. And every time someone got up from the table, I was £10 poorer, it worked out. But it was a fantastic marketing exercise, and people still talk about it today. We do cookery classes in village halls around the country, and I'm not sure whether this is working, or it seems to be totally independent of me pressing the button. Back in 2005, we worked with Exeter University to do I kind of realised that being kind to the environment was more than just not using synthetic pesticides and sprays and fertilizers. You know, we had to look at our carbon footprint, and we did a 2-year study with them. And I'm not going to go into it. Just the fact that we did invest that amount of money, I think, was significant, and I'm very glad that we did. And 12 years later, we really need to do it again, and we are in the process of renewing it. So this is one of my bit of advice to anyone starting a business, is to re-examine all that you've been told and dismiss what insults your soul, because there is so much crap told about business. You know, our business employs people, it sells to people, it buys off people. It's about people, and respect those people. You know, do not treat them in the way that I was treated by a Sainsbury's buyer. You know, treat them with respect. So I think that's a very good lesson for business. And my second one is that we all think much less than we think. We think, again, you don't leave your soul and your heart at home when you go to work. You know, it stays with you. And you know, so many of the decisions we make are essentially emotional, and they're emotional in the boardroom. They're probably emotional when you're talking to a supermarket buyer. And you know what? If you sort of recognise that, you're much better placed to sort of deal with it. And I do think this is a lesson that when I look around our boardroom sometimes and people are behaving in ridiculous ways, I remind myself of this. We've already had that. And artichokes, yeah, so we are experimenting, back to the artichokes again, with growing them in a system of agroforestry. They're planted in a cider orchard. You can see the rows of trees in there just about. So I'm really questioning the way that we produce our food and trying to find ways which are more benign to the environment. I'm trying to remember Praveen's phrase, leave no mark, was it? And if you can possibly make it better. You know, making it better is a struggle with agriculture. Most agriculture is hugely environmentally damaging, including some organic agriculture. It's contributed to probably about 1/3 of climate change. Some people say a half. We've got an appalling record and a lot to do to improve it. And thank you. The message to everyone. It started with trying to be useful, and I'd like to end with when the business became employee-owned, and I had to do a lot to try and write down how I wanted the business to be run in the future, and I came up with a thing, the we do it our way. There are 3 bits to that. The first bit, the we, is that we're in it together as staff, as customers, And actually, the environment as well, we share it with each other and with the other animals and plants on the planet. The do it is the importance of doing whatever you do, doing it really well every day, coming to work with a determination that you're going to do it better than you did it yesterday. It doesn't matter how many values you've got, unless you do the nitty-gritty really well, you're not going to be able to deliver those values. They're irrelevant without the details. And the our way is, I guess, comes back to dismissing what insults your soul and, you know, and figuring out what's good for your soul and everyone else's. And I've probably talked for too long. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. So, other than artichokes, what is the thing, or growing them, tasting them? What is the thing that gets you up in the morning? What drives you still of all the different bits?
I have to say, it is normally the sort of technical stuff of growing vegetables. You know, how to grow them better and how to look after the soil better is really what. And having sold the business to the staff, I'm still very much involved with it. But that's what I spend my time doing now is. Yeah. You know, out in the fields,
getting out
stuff.
there. Yeah. So, I mean, you grow a huge range of things, and you know, tomato as well, garlic, radicchio, romanesco, and endless. How do you choose which thing to focus, and like new thing to focus on?
Well, it is largely based on the opportunities presented by what people want to buy. So I'm very unlike a farmer in that way. I mean, I think that was my 2 years as a management consultant, looking for growth markets and so on. And that's very different. I mean, last week I was in Holland and I went to see a Dutch farmer who grew only onions. Okay. And he grew them exceedingly well, I have to say. I mean, there were almost no weeds in his field. I went to see another grower who grew only cucumbers, and he had to leave early that evening because he was part of the Amateur Dramatic Society. And I asked him what the play was about, and he said cucumbers. I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. So, I mean, so I think they're two ways. Either you really focus on something and you do it exceedingly well, or you're constantly kind of chasing the next opportunity. Yeah. And I don't, you can do either, but I guess just be careful that you know which camp you're in.
Yeah. So you said in a video, and you mentioned that it's now 74% staff owned, and you saying you've done better than you have done in 10 years. Can you describe where that idea came from of involving them, essentially?
Well, from my father, probably originally, but not that he ever said it, but the values that led to it came from that. And one of our newly elected staff council members, he did say when after their first meeting and we were sharing a beer outside, he said he felt so happy because he felt he was part of making a small bit of the world more like the world that he's always wanted to live in. Mm. And that's how I feel. Absolutely. I feel just completely. Taken aback by the way. I can't blame it all on Margaret Thatcher, but I think she takes quite a lot of credit. The kind of the absolute hegemony, the dominance of greed in our society, I just think is appalling, and it's just appalling in what it's doing to our world, to our environment, and it's not even making those people happier. Mm. It's anyway. Yeah. So trying to get away from that and demonstrate that there is a better way to run a business and indeed to live. Is what I wanted to do.
Mm. You've all been operating a long time, and there have been ups and downs. Can you describe a couple of the challenges? Which I think, again, is a useful thing for everyone coming into the industry.
I was writing next week's newsletter, actually, on the train back from France, and the title of it, If Only Life Was Longer. Because, I feel I've learned so much and made so many mistakes. And I kind of always knew what I wanted to achieve, but I didn't know how to achieve it. Mm. And in particular, I think I'm quite okay at managing people now, or I'm good at recognizing my weaknesses and getting other people to fill in there. But that just expecting people to understand what I wanted them to achieve and to I think they did share a lot of the values, but I just did an appalling job of communicating it and a pretty foul temper as a result of probably not having enough sleep a lot of the time. And so I think if I had learned earlier how to get the best out of people, life would have been a lot easier. Mm. Yeah.
And then, so the final thing is actually looking at customers. Obviously, you mentioned the cooking classes. What would you say is the best way that you guys connect with your customers?
Well, it's a lot about telling stories and you know, giving a sense of where the vegetables come from and who grows them. But I would urge, you know, anyone starting their own business is, I know they have some marvelous data and market research here at the library, but there's nothing like actually presenting with someone, a bit like that first box of bars, and actually asking them to give you some money for it, you know, because they'll say all sorts of things when they fill in the market research, which is normally they're filling it in projecting the sort of person that they would like to be as opposed to the sort of person that they are. And so there's often, it can be quite misleading, I think. So actually getting close to your customer through, at an early stage in your product development, of actually getting people to try it and find out what they're prepared to pay for it, I think that's always going to be the best way.
Great. Thank you very much for that.